Hello YouTube. In today's video, I am making a new updated Apex settings guide. This is coming from a 7x #1 Apex Predator and a professional Apex Legends player who has currently made 2 different ALGS lands. What I'm going to do is break down every individual setting from gameplay to controller to video, and I'm going to try and explain as much as I possibly can and as efficient as I can so that I don't waste your guys' time. So let's hop straight into it, okay? When it comes to interact prompt style, you want to keep this on compact because it makes the game less cluttered. A lot of these settings that I'm going to tell you about are trying to remove clutter from the game and overall make the game look more streamlined. Button hints, this is more preference, but once again at the bottom of your screen, it's just more visual clutter. I like to have it on because a lot of people will ask what controller I play on stream, but that's personal preference. For this crosshair damage feedback, I genuinely think this is quite possibly one of the most important settings changes you can make. Whenever you shoot an enemy, when you have this off, there is no feedback. All there is the sound notification and there's no visual clutter on your screen. If you turn this on to X, what's going to happen is you're going to have visual clutter whenever you're shooting an enemy, and that can potentially lead to being harder to track, depending on what FOV you play and if you play stretch, res, etc. Moving on, the enemy health bar, obviously have this enabled. You're basically throwing your own game if you have this disabled. Ping opacity, I would have this on faded. It just means that your ping fully visible at all times versus is it not. Enemy highlights, definitely have this on. If you don't, once again, you're just trolling. Obituaries, very important to have this on. It basically just shows the names in the top right whenever people in your lobby are dying. For minimap rotation, this here is probably one of the most opinionated settings. I like to have it on for the reason of it also allows you to see more of the minimap. And a big tip that I can give you right now is you want to spend a lot of time looking at your minimap. It allows you to be more in the game and allows you to understand more decisions about how you're going to play the game in the moment. So that's genuinely why I think you should have it on, because it makes you feel more inclined to keep looking at it. Weapon auto cycle on empty, I play with this on. Not really that important. It just means whenever you run out of ammo, whether or not your gun's automatically going to switch or not. This is completely personal preference. I play with it on. I think on's better, but it's completely up to you. Always sprint, I play with this off. I like the ability to be able to walk up on people. In comp, a lot of the time you're trying to walk up on people and get free kills from the start of a fight in which the enemies don't even have time to react. If you play with always sprint on, you don't actually have the opportunity to do that. For sprint control, I play with press. Obviously, if you play with the other setting on, that's irrelevant, but press is just way better to me. I think hold is just, it also makes you get stick drift way worse and it kills your controllers faster. Auto run is a setting that I don't use. I like the ability to just be able to press the button whenever I want to control that every aspect of my game. Once again, that's completely up to you. Jetpack control, I'm one of the only people to play toggle. I don't know why it's on hold, but Valkyrie's not a character that anyone plays anymore, so I don't really think that matters. Next one going down, incoming damage feedback. Make sure this is on 3D. I won't really go off too much into this, but make sure it's on 3D. Take a damage closes death box or crafting menu. Please, for everything, have this on off. If you play the game and you have that on, right, you're trolling your game. I'm going to tell you straight, the amount of people I've watched who are in platinum and diamond who have that setting on, who are just constantly dying when they're trying the armor swap, is insane. Please have that off. The rest of this, just copy this. For the most part, it's all redundant. Off-screen portraits off, just once again visual clutter. Pop-up off, visual clutter. Streamer mode off. This just allows you to see who's in your game. Doesn't really matter. Anonymous mode on. It just means that if you friends are ever in your lobby and you're killing someone in the kill feed, they can't just target you. It doesn't really matter for the majority of people, but for someone who streams, it can be very important. Usage sharing doesn't matter. Performance display, it just allows you to see your FPS and your ping. So very helpful. Communication filter doesn't matter. Tutorial systems doesn't matter. Reticle, I've used to be a big believer on green being the best one. So I used to always use a light green like this, but now I've been on blue. I think cyan's really good because there's basically no blue within Apex. There's a lot of green with grass. There's a lot of red. There's not really much blue at all. Besides the targets in the very range, it doesn't really exist. Same thing for your laser sight. I use green. I think it just looks cooler overall, but it's up to you guys. Colorblind mode. This one here is actually very important. So a lot of people won't actually tell you this. If you ever play recon characters, right, they highlight color changes based off the colorblind mode you have. So if you play with Deuteranopia, the enemies will be blue. If you play with normal, they'll be red. And if you play with, I think it's Street Denopia, they'll be a different shade of yellowish red. So you can actually change the color to make it easier to track. And since once again, blue isn't really in the game that much, it makes it way easier to see enemies and just makes the game a lot easier, especially if you're playing any recon character. So I'd highly recommend you guys put that on. Carrying on, the rest of this just does not matter. I don't play with subtitles, I don't know. For a controller, this will be the longest portion of the video. I'll try try and make it as efficient as possible. Button layout, I play with default. If you play with paddles, please use them. I play claw. I grew up playing like this, so I don't really understand like how to play without that. You can use a different combination of things. If you haven't played claw for the majority of your life, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend just playing like a different setting, a combination of stuff. Stick layout, default, interactive reload, tap to use and reload, 1,000,000% tap to use and reload. Way better. Crouch button, I play toggle. Once again, it just means that if I'm like AFK or something, I can crouch in a corner. I don't have to hold the button down. Plus, crouch spamming, I feel like is easier on toggle because I play claw. Your aim button, I play hold. You shouldn't use toggle. It's really bad because then you have to press the button twice for the same input. Like, I have to press the button twice on ADS, and ADSing is like the most important thing in this entire game. Survival slot button. If you have ADHD and you have a co-heirloom, I would recommend you turn this off because you can inspect spam like this, and it makes the game less boring a lot of the time. Trigger, Deadzone, and adaptive triggers. Have this off, please. Terrible. Don't play with this on. It is the worst thing you could ever do in your entire game. Now, a lot of you guys might be looking and saying, I'm playing 4-1 linear. What is this, right? I switch between ALCs and 4-1 linear. It really depends on how I feel, right? So I can go and give you guys an idea of both settings. 4-1 linear with per optic bleed through. Per optic bleed through is basically just this here setting here. So if you want to copy my sense, take these per optics, so go into your ALCs, click on this, copy and paste these numbers in, which I'll put them in the description. Try this settings. This is super overpowered, I'm telling you. A lot of people are switching to it. Try this out, see how it feels, but make sure once you've done that, you turn this off at the top, and those per optics will bleed through onto your normal settings. So carrying on down, make sure to have this disabled. These here also can impact it. So if you have like a 3 here, that actually is going to multiply with your per optics on ALCs, and it's going to make your settings way too fast. So just make sure to have this off. Carrying on, play with linear. Every other entire response curve in this game is terrible. Basically, linear doesn't have any additional dead zone applied. So what I'll show you is if you have stick drift, right? On linear, you will actually have stick drift. Sorry, I should have repeated that. If you go to classic, you have none. What classic does is just built in, I think it's like 5 to 8% dead zone, which means that you have to push your stick further past the threshold in order to get any input. You know why that's bad? Because if an enemy is strafing fast from left to right, you won't be able to react to that fast enough and actually change direction to track them. That's a big problem. So play linear. I wouldn't recommend any of these other ones. Look dead zone, once again, none. Unless you have an absurd amount of stick drift, play with none. If you do, I don't recommend you play 4-1. I recommend you play ALCs with like 2 to 3% dead zone, okay? Make sure your movement dead zone's on small. Make sure your inverted look is off. Make sure your vibration is off. Once again, same concept as trigger dead zone. Just make sure it's completely off, okay? For video, I play stretched res, so I play 1680 by 1050. Basically, my PC's been having FPS issues. Whenever your PC is struggling with FPS, if you play stretch, it actually gives you higher FPS and less input delay. So for me, I just enjoy the way stretch looks, but I also prefer like to have the more consistent FPS, especially in competitive whenever there's so much going on. Besides that, definitely play 110 FOV, either 110 or 104, nothing below this, nothing below this. Either play 104 to 110, completely personal preference. Try out the different ones. Make sure FOV ability scaling is disabled, please, because what this ends up doing is if you play a legend like Bloodhound, Octane, any movement legend, if you pop your ult, your FOV will actually change. For sprint, Q shake, have this on minimal. It basically just means whenever you run how much your screen like shakes, and honestly it's just annoying. For every other setting, if you're on PC, just disable everything. For the most part, you could play with texture streaming budget on 2 GB of VRAM, and then also you could play with map detail on high. Besides that, every single thing you want should be on 0, because once again, it comes from the concept of visual clutter as well as more consistent frames. You want to basically remove everything in the map that you don't need. So for example, certain like trees won't render in the lower graphics you play down, or certain buildings will be, well, not smaller, but they're thinner. So it's just easier to see things. It's easier to focus on enemies. Just try all those things out, okay? I'm also going to show you guys some ALC settings. If you want to play ALCs, and let's say, for example, you're playing 4-3 linear, okay? Let's say you're having these current issues, which I just told you about a few minutes ago with your stick drift, or maybe you just like playing ALCs. If you want to get the feeling of like 4-3, right? What you do is you play 240, you go to 200, you go to 220 for this one, it goes to 0, 30, exactly, then 0, then you go to 110, then 75, you go to 30, you go to 30 here as well, you go to 100, and then you go to 25. So make sure if you put these per optics in before, turn these off, okay? So basically, whenever you're on ALCs, okay, majority of the time, you don't have any ramp up time, right? So if I go back to the original 4 free linear, 4-1, if I turn, it speeds up after a short period of delay, right? So whenever you're on ALCs, if you want to mimic that, that's why we put in those settings that I did before. And this is why I think ALCs are better. You can mess around with both of this, but it's allowing you to control your stick drift, your response curve, which is basically how fine your movement feels in terms of aim. So for me, I like 314. Try it out. This is basically 4 free linear. This is as close as I've ever found. I've done a lot of like testing, so that's how I managed to find these settings out. Try it out, see how it feels. Also, leave in the comments any type of video ideas you'd want. I was thinking of making a Road to Pro series, basically where I talk to you guys how I've managed to go from being a tier 2 player with no comp experience to being a tier 1 pro, going to multiple lands within the span of 6 months. No joke. Hope you guys have a great day. Keep her lit, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out. That's right,